Welcome to the Cambridge Service Alliance webinar series. It is my pleasure to introduce Jingchen, and she's going to present Supply and Innovation, Unlocking the Innovative Behaviours in the Supply Chain. Over to you, Jingchen.
Thanks, Veronica. So this is a case study we conducted in the utility industry in the UK, actually the water industry, together with IBM. So in this study, we looked at the formation of an alliance to deliver outcomes. So first, we would like to introduce the background, looking at some changes in the industries. And then we look at the problem of the traditional approach. And also in this study, it provides a solution that is to form an alliance and to deliver outcomes. Then we will look at major stakeholders and key challenges. The main findings of this study is that we have identified 3 key success themes, and we're going to introduce these 3 themes one by one. And finally is the discussions and conclusions. So first of all, Keith from IBM would like to introduce some of the background and the problem of the traditional approach. Keith, would you like to introduce yourself first and then introduce the background?
Muted.
Thanks very much, Jingchen. Thank you for having me.
Unmuted.
This is Keith Wishart. I'm an associate partner in
Muted.
energy and utilities business. And for the past 3 years, I've been the head of innovation inside an organization called H2O, which is an alliance of 8 organizations supporting Thames Water, who are the largest water and sewage company in the UK. And IBM and my role in that has been to drive innovation into a capital program of about £2 billion, so some quite significant scale to it. And Thames as an organisation also have some quite specific challenges in terms of what's happening in the marketplace, in terms of what they have to manage, in terms of the legacy of the water infrastructure in London, and also a scarcity of resources. The southeast of England is actually a drought region, so demand is starting to outstrip supply of water in the region quite considerably. So thanks for just revealing the slides. This is really about the change required in the industry and the response of the water companies to it. So there's quite considerable change being driven, firstly by customers. So even in the simple utility industry of the water sector, customer demands are ever increasing and becoming higher because of the level of service expectation they get from other industries. Additionally, the regulator is driving change into the industry. Historically, the water industry has been very focused on delivering outputs, so building an asset, for example, the sewage treatment plant, but rather than being driven by the outcome, which is to remove and treat wastewater, which could actually be delivered by a number of different solutions, and rather simply just building a plant, but they've historically been rewarded for that. There's also changes in the market structure coming into place. So as of April next year, all commercial customers, which admittedly are a smaller section in the water company's business, will be able to change supplier, but ultimately water is on a journey to increase competition and increase ability for people to switch between suppliers. And coupled with an increasingly tight regulatory settlement, i.e. less money around for bills and ultimately less money around to drive the capital program, there's less money in the industry, which creates the need for innovation to do stuff differently. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is really, and thank you, if you just reveal the slide, that'd be great. This is really the core problem that water companies such as Thames Water were facing, which is internal innovation, and historically that's how they have innovated through R&D teams, and maybe some relationships with universities and R&D. Fundamentally internal has created a very restricted approach to innovation, so they're not sourcing the maximum number of ideas that they could do. Also, internal innovation tends to avoid tackling difficult problems, and difficult problems are often the ones that are most transformative. Those are avoided either because companies don't have the skills to do them, or they lack the funds. So the work that Jingchen is going to talk about is how we have formed an alliance to overcome that. And the alliance has a number of functions. One is it aligns the supply chain with the overall outcomes of the water company, the ultimate customer. It reshapes the relationships that you have. It breaks down traditional client-contractor relationships, and historically those were very adversarial and effectively took value away from the customer into non-added value activities. So the alliance is about how do you bring together, in the case of Thames, 8 different organizations and align them so that they're all driving towards a single set of outcomes, which are what the customers of the water company require. Jen, I'll pass back to you at that point.
Unmuted.
So to tackle this problem, as the innovation is locked within the firms instead of in the supply chain, actually in this case study, it provides a solution that is to form an alliance and to deliver outcomes, as Keith just introduced. So there are 2 big changes. The first is the shift from outputs to outcomes. So for example, in the water industry, instead of saying we need to build a drainage system here, which is an output and which is a capital investment, shall we say, let's take 200 properties of the flood register, which is the outcomes. So to achieve that outcome, the suppliers can have the flexibility to choose among several potential solutions. And it can be capital investment solutions, and it can also be the operational solutions, no-build solutions. And the second change is the formation of an alliance. So in this case, we looked at the formation of an alliance, but also in some other cases, it could be the formation of a joint venture, which is a legal entity in contrast to an alliance. So looking to the shift to outcomes, so suppliers are rewarded on outcomes for end customers and other stakeholders. So the suppliers will get rewarded when the experience for end customers and other stakeholders are improved. And these other stakeholders could include regulator or consumer council, for example. And in that case, the end customers are now included for consideration as key stakeholders. In contrast with that is the traditional approach when the suppliers is rewarded on output instead of outcomes. They are not incentivized to include end customers as key stakeholders. And because the suppliers are rewarded on outcomes, then certain responsibilities previously taken by the client are now transferred to the suppliers. And related with that is the transfer of risk from the client to the supplier. And when looking at the formation of an alliance, so multiple suppliers and the client form an alliance to jointly deliver this outcome. It does not mean the whole organization of these companies come to this alliance, but only part of these organizations come to the alliance and form it. So the alliance is relatively independent of its partner companies. And when looking inside the alliance, the clear distinction between suppliers and the client fade away. So they all work together as partners to jointly deliver outcomes to end customers. So now when we look at the major stakeholders of the alliance, the first is the client company. It does not only include the part of the client company that is in the alliance, but also the rest part of the client company that is outside the alliance. So looking at the client company as a whole organization, it actually plays a dual role as both the client company and also the partner company. So there is interesting dynamic happening here. And the second is other partners. So similarly, it does not only include the part of the companies that is in the alliance, but also the rest of the organizations. These organizations have their own strategic objectives, have their own priorities. So we can observe some interesting dynamic in the alliance and outside the alliance. And the third is end customers. So as we just discussed, one important characteristic in this model is that end customers are now included as key stakeholders. And the fourth key stakeholder is extended suppliers. So extended suppliers are very important to ensure the success of the alliance. So how to incentivize these suppliers to perform, and whether we should incentivize these suppliers on outcomes, and to what extent to drive the outcome model to the supply chain. These are the questions to be solved. And finally is the regulator. So because this is in the water industry, so the influence of regulator is very high, and it is actually the regulator who is driving the whole industry to be outcome-based. And now when we look at the key challenges, the challenges can rise from both inside the alliance and outside the alliance. When looking inside the alliance, the first challenge is that partners have different business models, meaning that these partners make money by doing different things. So some of the partners may be incentivized to deliver capital investment solutions, but others may be more incentivized to deliver operational solutions. So when they are brought into the single outcome-based model, there could be potential conflicts arise in the alliance. And the second is limited experience to deliver outcomes. So especially for some partners who were previously very engineering-based, output-based. So when they are incentivized on outcomes, so how to change the mindset and how to change the behaviors, these are the challenges. And the third is partners have different past relationships. So before the formation of the alliance, different partners have different relationships. Some of the previous relationships were not very smooth. And when they come to this alliance and work together, how to generate trust and how to generate collaboration, that is a problem to be solved. And the fourth is partners compete outside the alliance. So some of the partners, they are still competitors outside the alliance. So when they behave in the alliance, to incentivize them to share information and data, and to incentivize them to share capabilities is difficult and challenging. And when we look at the challenges outside the alliance, so the first is the whole industry was not collaborative and trusting in nature. So that will lead to the difficulties to build collaboration and trust both in the alliance and outside the alliance. So how to build trust and collaboration between the alliance and the extended suppliers, that is challenging. And the second is the whole industry was output driven. So the whole industry doesn't have enough experience to be rewarded on outcomes, then in that case, how to drive this outcome-based model and how to incentivize extended suppliers, this is a problem. And the third is the industry lacks information transparency, because the suppliers and the alliance is going to be rewarded on outcomes. So to deliver a certain outcome, the alliance can choose amongst different potential solutions to choose the best solution that can achieve better outcomes with reduced cost and risks. But to make that decision, the alliance will need information and data to support the decision. But when the industry lacks information transparency, that decision will be difficult to get. So looking at these challenges, some of these challenges are regarding collaboration, and some of the challenges are regarding outcome-based model. So in this case study, we've identified 3 key success themes to tackle the challenges, to solve these challenges. The first is collaboration, and second is commercial solution, and the third is operational design. Under each success theme, there are 4 key success factors, and we're going to introduce these key success themes one by one. So the first success theme is collaboration. So only when collaboration is formed in the alliance can work efficiently and innovatively. So the first key success factor under this theme is strategic objectives. So the alliance will need to design the strategic objectives based on the outcomes to be achieved. So these strategic objectives should be in line with outcomes and also should be accepted and agreed among partners. Also, when these strategic objectives are decided, they can be passed down through the organizational hierarchy to influence everybody's behaviors. And the second is organizational culture. So the alliance needs to create a positive organizational culture based on partners' cultures. So the opportunities for the alliance is that different partners have their own organizational culture. So if the alliance can take the best part of that and form a positive organizational culture of the alliance, that would be very helpful. So the culture should be positive and collaborative, and everybody should have the feeling of belongings, and they are incentivized to express different ideas. And the third is engender trust. Just now we have discussed the challenges. A lot of the challenges are regarding collaboration. So engender trust in the alliance is very important to stop competitive behaviors of different partners and to encourage partners to share information and to provide help to each other. And also they should trust each other based on their expertise and pay attention to their own performance, because performance will lead to trust. And the fourth is educational communication. So a strong, consistent communication is very important to achieve the shift in mindset through, and also to make people be aware of the business change. A lot of communication methods can be used. It could be physical communication, face-to-face communication, and it could be electronic communication, etc. The second success theme is commercial solutions. So whether a commercial solution can be achieved that is mutually agreed, accepted by the partner companies, will largely decide whether the alliance can move forward. So the first key success factor in this theme is to text focus. That comes in line with the outcome model. So when the alliance is going to be rewarded on outcomes, to achieve certain outcomes, they can choose either capital investment solutions or operational solutions. The former will come from the capital expenditure. The latter traditionally will comes from the operational expenditure. But now in this alliance, they all come from the same envelope, the whole envelope of total expenditure. So the boundaries between capital and operational expenditures are eliminated, and the partners should not be incentivized to deliver one over another. And the second is risk and reward sharing. So the alliance need to design a robust risk and reward sharing mechanism so that the partners will be rewarded based on their contributions, and the risks will be shared among partners based on their accountability. And also, the outcome KPIs should be transferred to the alliance. That is to what extent the alliance is going to be measured against the outcomes of end customers. That will need to be designed carefully. And the third one is benefit realization. So the alliance will need to design the benefit realization framework to facilitate the choice of optimal solutions that deliver outcomes and to solve potential conflicts between short-term financial objectives and long-term outcome objectives. So for example, if there is one solution that can achieve very good outcomes for end customers, but that is only achieved after years or considering the life cycle of the service, then there could be potential conflicts arise between that long-term objectives and short-term pressures to achieve financial benefits, especially considering different partners will have the pressure to report back to their shareholders each year. And the fourth one is incentive suppliers. So where possible, if the suppliers are mature enough to be incentivized, to be rewarded on outcomes, they can also be used on the outcome model. But the relationships between the supplier and the alliance, and also the outcomes to be rewarded, the measurements to be used, need to be considered carefully. And the third key success theme is operational design. So that is a process to embed the concept into everyday operations. There are also four key success factors. The first is continuing education. So continuing education will be very important to ensure the right culture is there in the alliance. So the training sessions on outcome focus and outcome thinking are very important, so that everybody can get this concept of outcome focus and outcome thinking. And also the leadership sessions for core managers will be important, so that the core management team will get the customer focus and outcome thinking and then convey this message to their people. The second is information platforms. So the alliance will need to design the platforms for the sharing of data and the knowledge, and also for the integration of capabilities. And also data security need to be addressed in the information platforms, so that when partners are sharing information and data, they are not afraid of any information leakage, and they are not afraid of the data security issue. And the third is process design. So to ensure the efficient running of this alliance, different processes need to be designed. This could include, for example, the decision-making process, looking at who should be involved in the decision-making and who should take the responsibility, and the customer interaction process, looking at the rules to interact with customers, and also the culture change process, collaboration process, risk management process, etc. And finally is the metrics and the measurements. So the alliance will need to design the metrics and the measurements to measure contributions of different partners, and to track the achievements of outcomes, to track the financial status of the alliance, and also to measure the behaviors of individuals in the alliance. So when we look at this whole alliance, and we have identified the three key success themes, that is collaboration, commercial solution, and operational design. These three key success themes actually mutually reinforce each other, and the alliance should work on the three key themes at the same time. The shift from outputs to outcomes implies increased responsibilities and related risks for suppliers. We discussed this transfer of responsibilities and the related risks from the client to the alliance, but that also implies flexibility and opportunities. So the alliance will have the flexibility to choose among potential solutions to achieve that outcomes. That solutions can achieve the best outcomes, and with reduced cost, with reduced risks. And also the opportunities for innovation. So the formation of an alliance to deliver outcome-based projects provide the opportunities to unlock innovation in the supply chain, because it can accumulate information and data from different suppliers, and it can integrate capabilities from multiple partners, so that the customer demands can be met, and regulators' requirements can be fulfilled, and also it can generate benefits for partners, not only financial benefits, but also the benefits for future development. And finally, there are real challenges for delivering outcome-based contracts with alliance, considering the unclear accountability, considering the lack of experience for this model, and considering the very high complexity. So this model is not for every project, and decisions should be made very carefully when whether to go for this model or not. Yeah, that is the content of this presentation and the result of our case studies.